Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Looking Deeper. This is Denise King Francisco, a.k.a. Dana, and the Reverend, sometimes irreverent, Sandra Herrick. Hey, Sandy.
I think it's the latter more so.
Yeah.
Hi, Dana.
How are you?
Oh, my God, I'm good. I'm good. I'm kind of itching for spring to be more springy. But other than that, it's the holidays. It's Easter weekend. It's the high days. So I'm good. I'm in that place of kind of like my childhood and my adulthood all together. Easter is always about chocolates with, hard-boiled eggs that rot somewhere if you forget to wash them.
And those nasty little jelly beans that get stuck underneath the grass and you find them a year later, right?
Oh, my God. Yeah. And little peeps, it brings back really treasures of memories. It really does. And then also the Easter outfit. We were lucky enough. We all got good new Easter outfits, and they were bright and shiny. And we paraded off to church, and then there was Easter dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Everything ended up with food in my family.
And what a wonderful thing that is.
Absolutely.
It really is the holy days of spring.
Yeah, it really is. I love that the light is back in the air. I love that the temperature swings. I'm outside doing yard work, so I'm challenging my broken bones that are mending and whatnot. But I do. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Can I bend that way? So it's great. It's great. Things are going good. How about you over there in the Enchanted Forest?
Well, here in the Enchanted Forest, it was a beautiful sky blue day, lots of sunshine, and tomorrow we're going to be up to a whopping 37 degrees.
Woo!
So it's a little chilly yet here in Michigan, but it's beautiful, and it isn't lost on me that it really is the holy days of spring in all of its adornment, right? I was reading an article earlier this evening about Easter and the origins of Easter and, the origins of Christianity, which, most of, if not all of the ceremonies and high dates of holy anything really are based on pagan calendar dates. And by now, most of us know that. So it's interesting to see how people around the world celebrate spring.
Yeah. Light.
The
equinox.
Yeah. And in other parts of the world, other parts of the world, it's now autumn.
Exactly.
So it really is intriguing, and I'm looking forward to tonight's show. And hi, Holly. Hey, Lily, Lady Hawk. It's great to have you in the chat room.
Hi, ladies.
For anyone that is out there listening, the chat room is open, and Sandy and I invite you to come in and join us here on Spreaker.com. And, of course, you can listen to us on so many streaming services now, and thanks to all of you liking, clicking that heart at the top of the chat room and following Looking Deeper here on Spreaker. You can find Sandy and I on so many distribution sites, including...
Thank you so much for doing that.
Absolutely. And it's because of our listeners. And every time we get a follow and a like, those streaming services take a look and they say, we want to carry that show too. So thank you to everybody for your support of our work. So Sandy, yesterday you and I were chatting on the phone about what we were going to talk about tonight, and it started out with you being in kind of a mood.
Yes,
and
I was.
Then we talked a little bit about that I got my first COVID vaccination, and we chatted about that a little bit, and we came back to the mood and what you wanted to talk about tonight.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. How did my mood affect you in my conversation?
Well, I thought that it was fantastic because the world is a-changin'. And we talked about, you asked me about how I viewed getting the COVID vaccine and putting it into my body.
Right.
And I think paraphrasing myself, I said something to you like, for me, getting the COVID vaccine is like preparing my physical body for what's needed right now on the earthly journey. I mean, I'm more than my physical body, and I feel like I've given it kind of a tune-up. No different than, I have the scar on my right arm from my polio vaccine.
Absolutely.
From when I was a kid. So that's kind of the way that I view it.
Well, there's that place, that word I use, the frequency, or to recalibrate, or to, adjust the frequency, or to, what's the vibration of now? And it's really quite amazing that, there is certain attunements for the holidays or ceremony or the equinoxes, whatnot, that vibrate and harmonize. And there are waves of pesticides that come in that need to be cleansed in our body, heavy metals that, we've absorbed that need to be cleansed from our body. And if it's not, they affect us, they kill us, they can, they bring incredible diseases. There's all sorts of vibrations that if you hear a sonic boom, it affects you. Thunderstorms affect you. Has anybody been by a lightning storm and actually been so close to the lightning that your hair goes up? And what does the smell bring? What do the plants bring? If you're allergic to something? I mean, there's so many ways to integrate how we're affected by our environment. But I agree with you completely that whatever now is unleashed in our environment, we need to learn how to vibrate with and correlate in a way that we learn how to harmonize rather than be harmed by it. This is not the first time that the globe had to look at this, or cultures have to look at it. And I've had my second shot, and I know that there have been horror stories for some people. And Bobby had his first shot, and he actually had more COVID in his body when he got the shot than he did when he got COVID. And it was explained to me later on by all people, by my eye doctor, that, did he have all the symptoms of COVID when he got a shot? And I said, yes, he did. We almost took him to the hospital. And it was because the shot said, I'm going to fight this. We're going to burn it out of you. And it's like it did its job.
Yeah.
It did its job. So it's an interesting time. I feel like I'm being responsible to support something that is viscerally happening in our world, not just in my home, in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
that I think is one of the first things I can say that I am doing to really be a part of our world, mm-hmm. not America or my town or my community or my spirituality. This is a kind of a revelation I mean saying as I sit here in this moment. Our world is being affected by this.
Well, and Holly Hagan just pointed out, she said, I thanked and blessed the vaccine as it went into my arm. And it was interesting, too, because the morning that I was getting ready to go get the vaccine, I talked to my body. I mean, I'm always talking to my body about stuff,
Yeah.
And I just said, okay, listen up, everybody, meaning my cells and whoever else was listening in there. We're going to get a shot today, and this is the purpose of it.
Right.
So rather than fight it, let's allow it and let's work with it. And,
exactly.
And I love when you get the little signs along the way. And I went to the health department, and it was so orderly and wonderful. And I got the Pfizer vaccine made in Michigan. And my nurse, her name was Mary.
Of course she was.
And I'm like, well, of course I get the nurse named Mary. Life is really, really good. But as Mary was getting, the needle ready and all, I had a talk with, what was in the needle. And the intelligence of it is what I want to say, the intelligence of all of it.
Yes.
And saying, let's work together and let's do what needs to be done. Because it reminded me, when this whole thing started, my sister Barbara called me and she said, Mitankala, I need to talk to you about the spirit of this COVID.
Whoa.
And I said, okay, let's talk about the spirit. She said, it's a spirit, it's a thing, it's alive. It has
Yes.
intelligence.
Yes.
And I've never forgotten that conversation and subsequent conversations about the intelligence of this disease, right? And so I had like this conversation going on, and other than feeling like my butt was dragging for a couple of days, really, I've not had any problems with it. But actually, I have a worse reaction to getting the common flu vaccine, which I got,
Right.
because Easton. I got it because of Easton.
Right.
And it was way more problematic for me to get that than it was this. So, but we all have our thoughts and opinions about it. And
Right.
I was at the hairdresser today, and I've been seeing her since for 15 years. She was 20 years old and fresh out of hairdresser school.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just very open that she's not ever going to get the vaccine, doesn't see a need for it. She had COVID, yada, yada, yada. And we were just talking and giggling about how we all approach things so differently and our mindsets. And I said, well, I did say to Todd last night that it's probably way less healthy for me to eat a bag of Doritos and, and a couple of liters of Mountain Dew every day. When we think about all the other things that we do on this human journey that are not good for us, like a bag of Doritos and a Mountain Dew every day.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So it's interesting times, and we all have different views of, what we're doing and why we're doing it, and spirit and intelligences. And when I got back to asking you, okay, so what about our show? You said, I'm in a mood, and I want to talk about Easter. And I want to talk about how we can take Jesus off the cross and walk with him.
Right.
And I thought, that's a great conversation.
Well, first I want to just say, interesting that you said that you talked to your body on the way to go get the shot, because I just I don't know why I'm coughing, but here I am. Excuse me. For days, I talked to my body about the shot because there was so many horror stories out there about people getting the second shot and getting very, very sick.
Uh-huh.
And I had the Moderna, and it was that place of going, okay, if this thing does that, let me get before it, let me get ahead of it, and kind of talk to my shot that was going to be exclusively there for mine, kind of sending it out and saying, whichever one, all that stuff. And literally, I'm in total agreement with you. I really talked to my body about that. This is something that I don't have to fight. I need to embrace.
Yeah.
This is something that is a part of something bigger than, and please be kind or gentle, or, I really thought, well, do I brace myself for illness, or do I embrace myself for wellness? And when I embrace myself for wellness, and it doesn't mean I have control over it, it really, I'm lucky. Let's say that I'm lucky, knock on the wall here, that the first one I had a sore arm and I was tired. And the second one, I didn't even have the sore arm. I got just a little bit of tired, which was, oh, good, I had to go to bed early. And
and a good reason for it. Yeah.
That's a big hardship for me.
Yeah.
And I had to exercise my thumb and find something good to watch. So it was like, it really was quite gentle, and I'm really glad to hear that you talked to it, because I really did, and you reminded me that I did. And it's like, let's be friends, because this is about making friends with something that is killing people.
Right. Well, and my dear friend David Sturkin, CAD, we text back and forth usually just about every day about stuff. And here in Grand Rapids, he runs the infusion clinic for the hospital. So it's the infusion for, the COVID stuff, the infusion clinic. So I said to him, so Kat, I'm getting ready to go get the vaccination. And so how did you handle that? And he said to me, from his shamanic world, because he's also a shaman besides a pediatric nurse practitioner, he said, I sang to my body and I sang to the vaccine.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
I love that. And he has a beautiful singing voice on top of it all. So I thought, well, lucky them.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there are things we can do. And I love what you said, Sandy, that you can brace yourself for illness or brace yourself for wellness.
Yeah. You know, it was, my heart feels good that the embrace took its way. And as you say it with singing, I mean, can you imagine the tribal energy of drumming to the vaccine?
Yeah.
So, to it, or, you know, there's so many ways to do it. And rather than just have a negative opinion or, you know, stand there with your, you know, your spikes dug in and let's go to Jesus talking about spikes.
That's a perfect segue.
Good segue.
So let me ask you a question, Sandra Herrick.
Yep.
Reverend Sandra Herrick.
Yes.
As an adult woman in her 70s who was raised Catholic,
yep.
If I ask you the question, who is Jesus to you, what is your answer?
Jesus is a man who was a rabbi, a radical rabbi, who had a very strong opinion about that God was inside us and that no one should be coming between us and God, that God created us, God is inside us, that we have that essence in us. It's not something we have to buy a synagogue for or a church for or a temple for. We don't have to barter for and pray and hope that we get found. It's something that is inside us. And that radical teaching as a quote-unquote rabbi or a human being who was anointed as a healer, and I was, before we came on, looking at a video, I actually looked it up, you know, did Jesus go to Kashmir after the crucifixion? And there's so much information out there about this holy man that went with a group of women to Kashmir and lived until 80 years old. And so the woman inside me is good in that space of being able to listen to a child's story through a religious organization that made Jesus a wonderful human being that took the hit for any and all of my sins and everybody else's in the name of loving his Father and loving humanity, and, you know, died on the cross and then resurrected and in his human form went up and sat at the right hand of God. And, you know, in the awe of a child hearing that and hearing what somebody did because they loved their father so much or they loved humanity so much that they suffered so much for me, the barter would be, I'm never going to sin. How dare I? You know, the child sitting there in the love of being loved so deeply, in the awe of the suffering that, you know, why would someone want to rescue me? And then why would I sin if they died for me? I mean, you know, as I got older and hormonal, it started to get questioned. But I say it with the integrity of, what a story. What a great control over a child or over an organization to even say, and I'm not challenging Christianity, I'm challenging me in seeing that there was, God bless you for calling me a reverend, you know, that there is an irreverence inside me when it comes to, I don't feel there should be another person between me and God in the name of a priest, or even when a Christian says, if you don't accept Jesus, you can't have God. And I'll tell this story because I always have. One day my brother, who's a very devout Christian, who became one, said, "Do you believe in Jesus?" But it was one of those finger-pointing, wagging, authoritarian, Bible-thumping challenges. And I said, "Yes, I do believe in Jesus, but I also know that Jesus is only 2,000 years old. And there are many holy beings, wonderful beings, before that also." So getting out and being educated or consuming the theologian way of thinking, I love the curiosity of finding out how vast spirituality is and the options there are, than squeezing it down to Jesus died on the cross and I have to be obedient or good. My mood was, I will be accountable. I will own my own sins. I will atone for what I need to do. And I want Jesus off the cross so that we can walk together again. And even that brings emotion to me, and start the healing or continue the healing as holy people in sacredness, not holy in better than thou, in becoming whole. And so my mood is very much about COVID and everything else. How do we become a whole rather than all these segregations or isolations or conversations that pit us against each other? So that's where my mood is. And on Easter, I want to put all my eggs in one basket of love.
Mm-hmm.
But to also take a look at the Jewish faith. It's Passover. They're still waiting for Jesus to get here. How do you sit next to another religion that has such a definite difference of opinion, and allow the conversation to explore humanity and the idea of holy, rather than pit each other against everybody or each other and deem there can only be one? That's the woman in me. I want the conversation. I want Jesus in the conversation, in his humanness, not in the deity of the sacrifice. That's that.
Well, that's a great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you?
Well, when I think of him, and I refer to him by the name Yeshua ben Joseph, Yeshua, the son of Joseph, and I think of him as an avatar, an ascended one, and as a teacher. And
yes.
I boil it down to not the crucifix, but love one another.
Yes.
Love one another, which is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a really hard concept. Or it's not a hard concept, but it's hard to do every day. Mm-hmm. And when you mentioned this to me, and I've been sitting with it for a couple of days, I thought to myself, in my life, all of the avatars, whether I'm talking about Yeshua ben Joseph, or I'm talking about Mary the Magdalene, or I'm talking about Mary the mother of, any of those avatars from what we call the past or antiquity, for me are very much alive, because
yes.
I talk to them.
Yes.
I pray with them. I have ceremony with them. I invite them to my personal altar every day.
Yeah.
And they're not relegated to a dustbin. And I think that more and more people are joining that way of thinking. So I did a little bit of research. And living here near Grand Rapids, Michigan, we have the Pew Research Center, PEW, and many people are familiar with Pew Research. And in the United States, only 47% of the population now say that they are affiliated with a religion, not just Christianity, but any religion. The lowest in recorded, since they've started recording who goes to church, who goes to synagogue, ashram, blah, blah. 47%.
Wow.
That's what I said. And so then I did a little more research. So what about COVID and people's faith? Well, for some people, their faith became stronger because, they needed their faith, and their faith got them through, is getting them through. For other people, they are finding that Jesus or whomever, Abraham, does not have to exist within the confines of four walls, or within mythology, or within a book or a scroll, but can be walked with and invited in without all of that construct. I was shocked, Sandy, by 47%. I have to be honest.
That's radical. I wouldn't have believed that. I really, So therefore, my child is still inside me thinking everybody's got a form of religion somehow.
Yeah. But not. That's
right.
That's not what it is. Yeah.
That's not the way it is.
It's not the way it is.
Which is actually kind of radically good for me, because it means, how are we all thinking?
Exactly.
We're coming out of the confinements of it has to be to what is it?
Exactly. And so this idea of punishment, you and I have talked about the Piscean age and Aquarian age, and so along with the Piscean age is the age of self-flagellation, self-harm, punishment, all of those sorts of things. And Aquarius brings in a sense of equilibrium and spirit and the old ways.
Right.
Before they were given a construct or confines of walls.
Right.
Yeah.
And separation from God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holly is saying something really good here in the chat room. She's saying it's easier to have a relationship with someone when we don't feel constant guilt over sinning against them. Then we can be with them. Such a good visual of walking with Jesus off the cross.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And Carla Joe is adding, hey, CJ, I also talk with those I work with, not just to or at. They are there for me always, with no one between us, just us two.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a radical concept for some people, Sandy.
Yeah.
That's radical.
And even the remedies, the herbs, the spirits, to walk with the spirit of, again, in this video that I was just listening to, I don't have the name of the person that went into the cave with Jesus. He was only on the cross for, I think, 9 hours, and most of them were on for 6 hours. And they said it was very, very possible that he had gone into a death kind of unconsciousness, or went into an unconsciousness, but he was still breathing when he came off the cross. They put him into the cave, and they brought 100 pounds worth of myrrh and something else. And, those were aloes that were there for healing, not for embalming.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So there's witnesses here that, wait a second, things happened to revive him. And the guy that was talking, the gentleman that was talking, said in this day and age, it would be that somebody had a near-death experience and came back from it, or that they were resuscitated, that they were over there, had time out, and were brought back. So he was actually experiencing, in the way that he was expressing it, that Jesus was resuscitated. And then because he was alive and was considered a criminal, he had to have a good story in order to get out of Dodge. So it's fascinating to hear the humanness rather than the radical control.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful that in walking with Jesus, being human with Jesus, Yahshua, Jesus, all the names, that it means that we do have the possibility of being brethren, sister, family, like kind. It's not elevated to something that is out of reach. And one of the things that they said in the video was that there are so many good, wonderful things that he did, outrageous things they did, and some of the books that were written about him have been withheld because they really don't want us to know what he really did. Walking on water and all that other stuff. It's like, no, this man really was quite something. And what if we started doing that? What if we were taught how to do that? Which really powerful yogis are, taught all sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it disempowered us from something very, very powerful in being a conduit of nature and spirituality.
And to your point, Holly is sharing in the chat room, I was friends with a man from the Middle East who told of shrines built at sites Jesus spoke at well after his crucifixion.
Yes, ma'am.
Now that's thought-provoking. Yeah, and you know,
yes, ma'am.
The Templars of any religion, and many religions have Templar orders. The Templar orders are esotericists. The mystics, call them what you want to call them, but the Templar, like Coptic Templars, I mean, they hold the information that Holly is talking about right now.
Exactly.
And listening to them speak. Last time I was in Egypt, I asked our guide, Sabre, who was a Muslim man, you know, I don't remember where we were, but I said, Sabre, if I ask you this question, who was Jesus of Nazareth or Yeshua ben Joseph, to you, who is he? Who was he? And he looked at me and he said, well, he was an avatar. He was a great teacher. And I said, oh, I love that word, avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was a brilliant teacher.
Yes.
And we honor him as a brilliant teacher, as an avatar.
And those are the teachings I feel that were stymied, and we're told if we learned that, we too would be persecuted, prosecuted, and weren't we? When in time the Inquisition came in and said, you're doing what with what? You're all that stuff. Everybody knows where I'm going with that. And I believe that in that place of the way that Jesus was teaching, it wasn't to demean us and say we cannot be with God. It was that we too were God-like.
Yes.
That God loved us enough to, God made us in his own image, or her image, the image. It's that place of this, the closer I get to wherever I'm going, to go back to wherever I've come from, there's that expansion of there's got to be more.
Yes. Well, I
know that. See, that gives me the goosebumps. I've witnessed people die, so I know there's more.
Yeah, of course. And you and I grew up with the Stations of the Cross.
Yep.
And I've redone the Stations of the Cross in many countries. Lily was with me last time in France, at Rocamadour, and somebody said to me, well, that the Stations of the Cross, that's the life of Jesus. And I said, that's the life of you and me.
Right.
And this person looked at me and said, what?
Mm.
Those stations are the human journey, including Judas and the crucifixion, right? We've all experienced that.
Yeah.
So whether it's stained glass windows of the Stations of the Cross or the pilgrimage, it's all about reflecting on our own lives and our own lives in those stations of being, dark night of the soul, initiations, call it what you will. And so this week, tomorrow is Maundy Thursday. There in the Garden of Gethsemane, we've all been. It's fascinating. And Carla Jo, I love our wonderful friends that are in our chat room because they're so well versed and
they're sassy.
They are. Carla Jo is saying the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, teach that Jesus was in South America during those 3 days in the tomb.
How do they explain that?
See? Interesting, isn't it? Well, I'm guessing maybe their prophet or the ascended one named Moroni that came and delivered, the teachings, delivered that bit of information. Holly is saying, my friend said that in the Middle East they call Catholics the Mary people after our reverence for the Holy Mother. That made me smile. Yeah.
What I love is that if you go to another country, even the religion that you learn in your country has the tone of that country. It's not a lockdown as only this. There is the vibration, the essence of the culture, or the dignity of their own personal wisdom.
Yeah.
And so, to be hard to the grindstone, dead set, there can only be one, is a fascinating concept. And why someone holds on to that so tight is fascinating. As much as it's not a decision I made to let go. It was a discovery I was having as I got older, that religion did not give a woman the right to be human or honored for the strife she had to go through by being a woman, and still be honored and respected at the altar.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, wait a second. You're telling me I can't be with God? You're telling me what are you saying to me? And it did not make sense that God would be so critical and, quite frankly, racist.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, especially in these times. So it's, I celebrate Jesus in that way where if I'm at a fire and it's a sacred fire, we're sitting down. If there's music, we are, like with Kate, singing. If there's dance, it's the freedom of knowing that the art of being sacred is also being available to move your body rather than just be on your knees, rigid, hands together, which is like you can't stand up, you can't touch yourself, don't sneeze, don't cough, don't move, look rigid, close your eyes, don't even allow yourself to watch the phenomena, and to believe that as that child that was the perfection of being a good girl in church in front of God.
Yeah. Our wonderful Lily is saying it's so true about the Stations of the Cross, and it's amazing to me to hear over the years about Jesus traveling the world after the crucifixion. A friend of mine who is Buddhist told me that in their sacred texts there are stories about Jesus. I think we can say that Jesus was a world traveler.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that supposedly he lived into his 80s. It's documented that the healings went on. There were miracles that happened. And so I am grateful that he was able to get away from his persecutors and to still give the beauty of who he was in I would say the gift he has, but more so in the right for him to be who he was, and for the people who were in need of what he had to receive it. I mean, that's the other side of the bitter pill. It's like, wait a second, why should I be denied what Jesus really has to give as that avatar?
Right.
What is it that he would give me if I were sitting or standing or kneeling or laying down next to the fire? You know, what would I go to him and him bestow upon me or teach me? What do I still seek to hear and share in the mystery of that mystique that's out there that he is so familiar with because of that incredible connection to it all?
Mm-hmm.
To expand me. I still want that. And I don't feel it's about being tight and rigid and confined, because so many Christians won't even look at astrology. I mean, that's evil. When astrology is such a beautiful science of human behavior and kind of designed in the sky to say, this is what got created so that you can understand yourself.
Yes.
Talking to the stars, where we come from.
That's right. Jesus here with all of his gifts, seeking and learning from his earth life. That's what he came here to experience. You're right about that, Lily. And there are many names for him. I remember being up at the Northern Cheyenne Reservation up at Lame Deer at the 13 Indigenous Grandmothers gathering. And I was sitting next to my granddaughter Davian, and Dell and Barbara's cousin, Chief Philip Whiteman, came into the arena. And he told a story. And the story was about a young man whose name was Sweet Medicine Boy.
What a great name.
Yeah. And he told the story of Yeshua ben Joseph and talked about when he was here in North America. And he walked across, yes, and how he walked across North America, and he was known as Sweet Medicine Boy to the Northern Cheyenne people. And Wanikia, there are many names for him. Wanikia, the life bringer, the life giver. So the first time I went up on the hill, Tara was there with me. You remember this, Tara? We were in Pine Ridge, and I was going to be put up on the hill in my first humble H on my vision quest. And Wakian Snamani, who gave me my hochaka, my altar, and gave me sanction to do the ceremonies, he had a surgery, and he had a near-death experience in surgery. And in the near-death experience, his grandmother came to him. And in this near-death experience, his deceased grandmother said to him, "Stop putting her through so much," meaning me.
You?
Yes.
You.
She's passed all of the tests that you've given her. Stop.
Whoa.
Stop what you're doing. It's time for her to have that chanupa. Stop what you're doing. And he said in this death state, "But what about her being a Christian?" And this was his grandma, Fool's Crow, Katie Fool's Crow. And Grandma Fool's Crow said to him, "Jesus was a good man. He walked the good red road. He walked the good red road. What men have done with his teaching since he was here is not his fault. He walked the good red road." And he talked to me about this before he put me up on the hill, and he was still very sick. And this is when he told me, he said, "I can't be here in this space to hold you. You're going to have to hold your own ceremony. You're going to have to do it for yourself. I can't. I'm too sick." And I said, "So when Grandma Fool's Crow said that to you, did you think that you were going to be struck down by lightning or what?"
Right.
And he said, "No, but when I woke up from being dead, I could hear her telling this to me again. And I've had to rethink that that's right, he was a man and he did walk the good red road.
Well, didn't he just have a Jesus experience?
Well, yeah. So, so there it was, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like, oh my gosh, he dies, talks to his grandmother about you and Jesus, and then resurrected to come back and say, you can walk, you can be who you are. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like, how can we be who we are and be given the grace of what are the tests that we're being given? Yeah. What are the challenges that we're being offered? What is the test that gets the final pass, or failure of I made it to be loved by God, or to walk with Jesus, or to do the healing, or to, let's put it, I want to be more pristine about that, to access the energy to work with in healing. Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
To know that it's not the me, it's the we. It's the, whatever, see that, there's the energy right there. That whatever that conduit is that he also connected to. Yeah. The avatar vibration.
Yes.
And that's huge.
Lily is saying, yes, astrology. It blew my mind that we saw astrology stained glass windows in Notre Dame Cathedral in France and other parts of France. When we went to... Yes, when we went to the cave of Mary Magdalene, she's probably, the avatar that I walk closest with. She and Mary the Mother, of course. But when we were in St. Baum, at the top of that mountain, we had to go further to get to the cave. And everybody, if you look at the artwork or the photo that I used for the promo tonight, that was taken in the cave of St. Mary Magdalene at St. Baum. And those are actually her bones in that reliquary. And the symbol for St. Mary Magdalene is the sunflower. So you'll see in the reliquary there the sunflower, but those are her bones from the cave. But before we went up to the cave and we were in the little gift shop waiting, to be allowed to go up the mountain, there were magnificent pieces of astrology. For instance, I have a necklace of the Scorpio constellation, and it's on the symbol of the Magdalene. And I saw that, and I held it, and I had to have it, and I have it here in my home, because I thought, there's a whole lot of stuff that got lost coming over the pond, Sandy.
Right.
The pilgrims didn't bring it all. That's all I'm saying.
No. And why would it be so significant that it would create the fear that it has to be negated and damned?
Yes.
What is the power they don't want us to have, which is actually wisdom, intelligence, and collaboration with the universe.
Yes, and autonomy. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, I'm back to COVID. It's like, I love that it's considered alive, because it means how do we then correspond with it as a life force and become a part of something, a hybrid that's brought into our universe, our globe, our orbit, our air. If we don't learn how to collaborate with it or integrate with it, I mean, honestly, and this is sad, it's horrific that we die. So how do we elevate our awareness or calibrate our body or educate our minds to expand to this is where we are and this is what's next? And yes, choose and be and grow and see. But is it not another art of a ceremony? I mean, the way I got my shot was, in my car through the window and some sassy women, and, you know, it was like the easiest needle I ever got in my life. And then the military were literally escorting us through, and da 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 da. So it was outdoors. It wasn't in a high, you know, lots of alcohol, just a little dab will do ya. So it wasn't in a sanitized area. It wasn't in a medical environment. It was get in line, almost like the blessing of if you're going to go and get holy water down at the river.
Yeah.
You jump in and get splashed on, and whatever you got splashed in has already passed by the time the next person jumps in. So, you know, it's just amazing how even that, what I just said, even that was, when would we have allowed ourselves to be given such a radical dose of a vaccine if it were not so needed, or so many people needed it now, where you just don't make your appointment to go to the doctor or sit at the pharmacy. I mean, we shifted our intelligence to, this is safe.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the open, out in the field, bivouac, you get it where you can get it, rather than you have to have it sanitized this way, you have to have it this. I mean, even hearing myself see this in my brain and feel this and hear this in my, it's like I went to where I could get it. I did not say what you have to do in order to get it to me. It was like, you have to be in a nurse's outfit. You have to have a doctor's coat. You have to, it was like the generosity of, I need it. Here it is. Come get it.
Yeah.
Which is an answer to a prayer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I prayed for my shot.
I think a lot of people prayed for a vaccine. So when people say, well, you know, it hasn't been on the market that long or whatever, man, the power of prayer is real. It's real. And
I prayed for my shot, and I also fought to get it, because when I went on the computer, you know, it was going to be the end of April, and I was like, what? And then I couldn't figure it out. You know me, Lily. So it was like, okay, fine. And I called my doctor, and they said, call 211. I called 211, and I waited and waited and waited and waited. And I called them, you know, like 2 phone calls that I had to hang up on one, and then got the next one an hour later. They were so generous and so kind. I called on a Thursday. I got my shot on a Sunday, rather than months that I still would be waiting for. Mm-hmm. So even that, in praying or talking, you know, I can't say I pray out of pray, but I talk. Me and college, we talk. I talk to them. We talk back to each other. And there's that place of, I could hear the vaccine kind of say, Sandy, I'm here. Mm-hmm. Your dose is here. It's not going to be there in April. Your dose is here. And interesting, I get it on a Sunday. Hallelujah.
Exactly. So if I ask you, so Sandy, when you're walking with the avatars, are there certain avatars that you are drawn to or that you spend time with in meditation more than others?
It's fascinating. If I'm really in trouble, it really is. I go to the saints. I go to Jesus. Interestingly enough, I'll go to Mary. It's interesting that there's that place inside me that they are my familiars because I grew up with them, and so they're in my psyche. When I really have to have a heart-to-heart with that spiritual side, it's with Sir Charles, in that place of knowing that there is a kindred spirit out there that has befriended me. There's also my children that have, you know, I had aborted, and yet there's a sacredness there with Jason. And so I have a close knit. When I was younger, beings came and they channeled to me and through me. And one was called Run Tree, which was this Native American that, I mean, it was like there was a love affair of endearment that I could go and be with this being that was being a confidant in getting me into how I needed to trust beyond being born in Connecticut. And so there's that place where I'm not the most read person. I don't do all the research. I do the experience, and I sit, and it's like what comes up to me is what I'm with. I would say one of the great avatars that I work with is the spirit of the horse, in all due respect. The spirit of the cat, the spirit of the horse. And it's that place of knowing that there's, and even when I say that, I'm going to cry, you know, when the horse, and you know the gesture, when a horse bows its head to you and endears itself. The breath of the intelligence. You've said many times the medicine is what you do with your horses rather than to ride them. And so there's that place where I would go and be on my horses, to be with the wind, to be with the air, to be with the sky. The moon is an avatar for me, because that light that comes out brings vision, brings shapes. Every full moon, believe it or not, I'm on my back deck naked.
I can't imagine.
Somewhere in the middle of that, I'm standing out there, freezing cold, rain, hot. You know, the peepers are out now; they're coming out, and I mean, I'm out there naked and stand in that moon and feel the quality of all the beings. There's something I want to ask you. Right now, something is happening, that manifestation is happening like lightning. I'm seeing beings. Things are dropping out of the sky on the ground. Something is happening where physicality is showing up much more present from spirit materializing. Is anybody else having those experiences?
They're in the chat room. Let Sandy know. Are you having any manifestations of spirit?
I will share one with you. I was in therapy on Tuesday. I adore this woman that I'm working with. And we were talking about some things about my childhood in the endearments of it, because something's really, since the horse medicine, since being with the horse and my ribs and whatnot, something has opened up. And I heard this noise. It was like a flutter and I looked down on the floor, and a cascade of my childhood photographs were on the floor. From me in my bassinet, to me in my graduation, to me, I mean, I just looked there and I said, there's a bunch of pictures on the floor that I did not have anywhere near me. I don't even remember where I've ever, and I picked them up and I showed her every single one, and she goes, well, were they in an envelope? Or I said, no. And I showed her my side table, and I said, they're just on the floor. And I said, I could be really freaked out right now, but what I'm going to say is something is tracking my whole childhood, and photographs are me here to witness the whole experience. Last night, I had gone to sleep. I woke up, and when I woke up, across the room where Silver Skull is, I was in a pair of pajamas that when I had my birthday, a sleepover from when I was 17 years old, 16, 17 years old. It was so physical, it was so real, that I looked at it and I was like, who's over there? Who's oh? And she looked over her shoulder, and it was me looking at me from that age. So whatever's going on with my psyche, my healing, my unraveling, whatever the history is or the wounds or whatever. I mean, she looked back at me and it was like, that's me. How'd you get, where are you? And it was like, I even said to Bobby, if I'm not here in the morning, know that I've tracked my whole life. I mean, it's like, it's running right there before my whole life. It's like, here it is. And who I talked to last night was Jesus. And like, I went out to the moon and literally said, now I lay me down to sleep. That prayer.
Wow.
And it went back, it makes me kind of cry. It went back to the innocence of the wonder of something's happening, and I wonder what it is. I was going to cover all my bases.
Right.
But it was to go out into the deck, and I thought, something's happening to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, Lady Hawk is saying, I have seen a lot more out of the corner of my eyes. Jessica Clark is saying, yes. Lily is saying, I had a recent cool moon dream. The dream was in high definition. Del Marie is saying, I had a wonderful reminder this weekend about the natural laws and how we neglect to see the messages. There are changes happening. And yes. Lady Hawk is saying, I had a dream where a beaver was flying too.
Wow. Wow. Well, pay attention, because there's that place where in that, and I'm going to call it my innocence, because maybe it was my purity of knowing that, we don't know what's happening really, but we know things are happening. That when I went out and stood naked in the moon, it was the best I've got is I'm here and I'm going to sleep, and I pray my soul to keep. And if I die before I wake, I pray my soul to keep. It was so simple that I didn't barter, I didn't beg, I didn't ask. I went back to that simple prayer of, if this is it, this is it. And if it's not, whatever's next, I'm so ready for. It's like getting the COVID shot. Maybe I'm getting a shot from the moonlight of the same kind of being inoculated from whatever prevented me from being to being allowed to be. Getting Jesus off the cross, understanding that there's more to it than telling a child you're only allowed to think like this and be blessed by God if you're that good. And, that kind of makes my heart feel constricted I was so ready to believe that, because I already felt I loved God, I loved Jesus, I loved church. I mean, I wanted to belong again still. And as much as I love these sacred places, because I respect what's beyond them and what made them and why they exist.
Carla Jo is sharing, she's been seeing more beings out of the corner of her eyes, and Holly is sharing, my deceased grandmother was in the dining room the other day, smiling at me while I ate a chili dog. She came in faster and easier to see than normal, like the veil is thinning faster. And it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, something was walking up and down our hallway. The hallway,
yep.
And that somebody walks on those floorboards. It's like they crack there and they don't there. And I thought, oh, Bobby must be up. And it was like the dog was on the bed, the cat towards the bed. And it's like, here come the shivers on my shivers. And I thought, something was walking up and down the hall. And to the point where I always kind of go to whatever it is, what's out there? It was nothing. And I thought, it's getting close to my brother's Tony's anniversary of him passing. It was my mother's birthday. I remembered the day after.
Ah. Yeah.
And it's like, I can't, it's like the 27th. What is this day? What is this? But God, it's your mother's birthday. So there's lots of phenomena happening. And I feel that allowing Jesus to live longer rather than that day of suffering allows the phenomena to continue also. I will respect the story. I will respect the reasons they were made. But I also respect that the great secret is that there's more.
Mhm. Mhm. And that the avatars of all time are very much alive, just as we are very much alive when we pass out of our physical body. And as I'm sitting here in this room and I'm facing my altar and I'm looking at, okay, so Dana, if you're talking to the avatars, who are you talking to every day? And as I'm looking at this altar, it's the, Tesawi, White Buffalo Calf Woman, Mary Magdalene, Isis, the Black Madonna, Mary, and the Kaliak. It's the goddess, it's the mother. The mother is my avatar, if you will, or the goddess, and in her many faces and in her many mythologies and stories and all of those sorts of things, that's my main avatar, is
well, I guess
the mother.
I guess I forgot. It's like ever since I was, quote unquote, in 6th grade without knowing, for me it's Sekhmet.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is a cat woman.
Yeah.
So, and Sekhmet and I, when I went to Egypt, it was to see her sanctuary, to see that statue in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
To not be in a museum, but to be with the physicality of that temple. And I mean, it's one of those things where it would be like going to Jerusalem.
Mm.
I mean, I can honestly say that in my heart. It would be like going to Jerusalem for me. And it's amazing because when we were going to her temple, I had to I didn't want to be with the people that I was with. They brought us in way at night so that we actually were there about 3:00 in the morning and spent an hour, and then we walked around and we were there at sunrise. We were given incredible opportunities to be in these areas as if it was like when there was no electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And to walk the corridors of those temples, it was timeless. Many things happened for me in Egypt that transported me to the foreverness of it.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm with that type of an avatar, there really is a foreverness.
Yes.
And I am grateful to be able to feel something inside me that is that old and that young.
Mm-hmm.
Something knows something about, going to Egypt. You don't go, isn't this fascinating? It's like, I know this corner.
Right. Yes.
I know that smell.
Yes.
My hand knows this wall.
Yes.
I mean, when I sat on the stone on the pyramid, to think that my whole life was looking at pyramids in books and pictures and, the fantasy of how to get there and how does that happen, and to know that I sat down on a stone that literally let me know it was waiting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And to believe it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fantasy. And, of course, there was the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Coming, of course I would be in Egypt for the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
Without even planning it.
Right.
So those kind of things, when they happen, allow me to see how the universe is engaging with me as much as I desire to engage with it. So to even be more specific, that the universe desires to engage with me.
Yes.
Exclusively, inclusively, it knows my name.
Yes.
And I think that's important for all of us to really trust, that it's not just putting our hands together or pinching our fingers or sitting cross-legged and saying, please, 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 I hope you see me. They're here like, you don't see me seeing you.
Mhm. Well, I was learning with a couple of African teachers they're from Africa, but they currently live in the UK. And I was studying with them to brush up on my African ancestral spirituality. And one of the things that they said in the beginning of our gathering together was this, and it's really resonated with me. God is our oldest relative.
Yeah.
How often do we think of God or Creator as our oldest relative?
Never. That was never, well, Father, God, but you are a child of God, but that's never been said like that.
Yes. Yes.
That's brilliant.
And the moment that this man said this, one of our first tenets in African spirituality across all pantheons, because Africa is very tribal as well, but that Creator, call it God, Maker, is our oldest relative, and as such is our ancestor. And that ancestor lives in our blood and our bones, just like all of our ancestors.
Well, quote unquote, as just before you said it, I thought, well, if he's an ancestor, then I've got his DNA.
Yes.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
Which goes along with what Jesus is saying, God is inside you.
And those things that I do, you shall do greater.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Phew.
The other thing that was taught in the class that I really enjoyed is the fact that creation is always expanding.
Yes.
It's always expanding because Creator is always expanding and becoming. Nothing is stagnant. Nothing is static. Our beliefs are always expanding. Our understandings, if we're open to them expanding, our understandings of the ancient teachings expand. And I believe that part of the uncomfortableness in the world today is that we are stretching and expanding. And for some people, not being held in a static position with regard to religion, spirituality, what have you, is so uncomfortable. And for others, it's a breath of fresh air. And for me, that's part of why, when I read that statistic, that 47% of Americans now say that they are affiliated with a religion, and not just Christianity, across the board, which is the lowest number recorded, I thought to myself, because we are evolving and ascending and expanding.
Which is the resurrection.
Yeah.
Which is the return. We're given many ways to live our life. We're not given one life only in my understanding of this. I have so many lives within this life, and this body is experiencing it. But it's episodes, it's chapters, it's the phenomena of how I have to get from one place to another place isn't easy. But Spirit makes sure that pathway is like, okay, Sandy, pack your bags because you're going. If you don't pack them, you'll have to shop.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
And that's happened. It's like, well, I'm here and my suitcase didn't make it. So it's fascinating how Spirit does keep saying, keep coming, keep coming,
mm-hmm.
keep coming. And what I like is the promise without really having to be a promise. It's kind of a given. There is more.
Yes.
And the curious brain is available to seek it, and if you're seeking it, it's there to discover. So it's not hiding from us. It's not really denied. It's how we are curious brings us to it, and how our past collides with it is how it educates us. So I was in a mood. I feel better about it.
Well, I'm glad you feel better about it, Sandy. So we are way beyond the top of the hour, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And Carla
Absolutely.
Jo, I think this is the perfect wrap up for this evening. She's quoting, "When I was a child, I spoke as a child. Now I am grown and have put away childish things."
Wow.
Brilliant. With that,
Hallelujah.
everybody, good night. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for supporting our work. Sandra Herrick, have a beautiful evening, my friend.
You too, and everybody, thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you for indulging us and my moods, mood swings, but most importantly, to really be able to travel this expansion with us, and I'm honored. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night, Sand.
Good night.